Once again, having parts back from the machine shop is an amazing thing. Let's do an inspection. All right, so the block is back from the machine shop. And we have here the piston rings and the pistons that'll be going into there. These are the Manley 30 over. As well as Eagle rods. I have a set of Eagle rods here in the Supra, and a couple years now hasn't given me any issues. Currently making about 750 horse. So I trust these. These are all right. Whenever I get a block back from a shop, I always just do a quick run over my fingers and make sure that there are no burrs sticking up. Nothing that would catch the head gasket when it's being laid on. Now I know this is going to put some of my finger oils on there, but typically afterwards I go over some type of cleaner or acetone to make sure there's no oils left behind. But no burrs, everything feels straight, everything feels fairly flat. Additionally, then what I'll do is I'll check the cylinders just to see how the hatchings are done. And it looks like we have just a little bit of leftover some type of debris, or maybe just from the bag there as I was cutting it. But yeah, everything looks fairly good to me. Now I do not typically replace the freeze plugs or the core plugs on a block as long as they're factory. I've always left them in my block. Some of the old school Supra guys will say to leave these in there and leave them if they are untouched. So I did not replace those. So those remain the same as they were when I got them. And lastly, one of the other things I do like to check on these blocks is these ports here to make sure they're not rusted out. I think this is where all the coolant water comes through. But as long as they're not rusted out and collapsing and nothing came out during the machining process, and I'm usually fairly happy with them. And I'll do the same thing with all the other water jackets around the block and oil ports and all that. But this is a pretty good block. It came out of a junkyard motor, so looks like it's in pretty good shape all around. Now one of the last things that I'll check here when I'm looking at the bottom side of the block is mostly just looking for that there's no leftover metal or flakes or anything from the machining process. Also look to see that there's no gouges or scraping or anything along the valleys here in the crank. Everything looks all right. Looks like all my bolts are present in the cab, which I won't be using those anyways. But this was tested at the machine shop for cracks and all that, and everything apparently from the machinist says everything's fine, so looking pretty good. I also did request that they pull these balls out and cleaned out inside of there, and those valleys, same thing on the other side. So yeah, it's looking like it'll be a good candidate for our build. So after the initial inspection happens on the block, one of the first things I like to do is clean out these here cylinders. And what I have seen online is the use of automatic transmission fluid with the rag. I go ahead and dab some of that on here. Now I've already done it, so I'm not going to repeat the process, but once you've dumped some of the transmission fluid here on a rag, I like to just go in here and clean it. I'll start with an up and down motion all the way around the cylinders, and then I go sideways and flip around the other way. And I do that for each individual cylinder, and then once I'm done, I grab another clean rag and I'll dab it again, do it one more time. Then I'll take another clean rag, but not dab it at the third time. And I like to clean everything up, make sure I got everything out of there. And once I'm done doing that, I like to check and make sure that there's nothing left behind from the rag themselves. You don't want any kind of cloth material or anything else left behind, which we do have one right there. So I'll just reach in or I'll blow it out and get that out of there, and I'll keep on checking the rest. Same thing on the upper sides. Check again, make sure there's nothing there. Everything looks clean. So now I've cleaned out the cylinders here for the pistons to go in. So once I have all my parts, I'm going to pull them out for an inspection. And typically what I like to do is check the small end of the rod here, which has a press fitting. This is where the wrist pin, which is currently my right hand, will go into. Now I do end up finding a small burr here that I realize I'm going to have to file out, but I'm going to go and just test it out. I'm going to put the wrist pin in here. If you can't get it in, don't jam it, don't force it. Don't force anything. As you can see here, I was able to get it in easily, but it doesn't want to pop out on the other side because it looks like that burr is hanging it up. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out, push it off to the side. I'm going to take a file to it, and once I've cleaned it up a little bit, I check the rest, and everything is good to go. So now my next inspection is going to be on the pistons. So I pull the piston out, and I also pull out one of the wrist pins, And then I'm going to do the same visual inspection as well as a feeling inspection where I feel for any burrs or any irregularities that might not let the wrist pin pass through. So now I'm going to take the wrist pin and I'm going to gently push it in there. I'm not going to jam it. If it hangs up, I'm not going to push it anywhere. I'm not going to force it. As we can see, it slid in and out, but as I come in through the other side, it's a little hard. But again, I'm just going to pull it out. I'm not going to jam it. Try again, and then it slides right on through. So now everything looks good to me. In and out, no issues. And put everything back where I found it because you don't want to lose anything. I'm going to wrap it up here and call it a night. It's currently 5:30 p.m., rather 5:40 p.m., and tomorrow's a work day. Today's January 1st, so it's a New Year day, right? So today we had off and went ahead and checked the block after getting back from the machine shop. Make sure we didn't have any things left over from the machining process. We also checked over our pistons, which were good. Our rods, which had one that had a small burr that we took a small file to it and very lightly brushed that out and was able to get the wrist pin to push through. So I'm going to put a bag on this tonight, make sure we keep the dust out of here and everything. And every time that I unwrap this, I will still clean everything out, make sure that there's no dust of any kind that's in there. Albeit while we are in New Mexico and it does get pretty dusty out here, I still try to keep out as much as I can when we do this. So just as a reminder, anytime you get brand new parts, just because it's brand new from reputable sellers and manufacturers, you still always want to check and make sure that there's no dirt, dust, grime, imperfections, or anything left behind in case you have to fix it. Because while some of these parts are, we'll say, budget parts, it's your time that you end up losing once you put it in your car. If it doesn't run right, it's because you didn't do your checks. So make sure you always do your checks.